And then there's 4 people on YouTube right now. Yep, okay, I see myself. Five viewers, yay. It sends like a notification to people, right, in the YouTube app. Is that how these things work? It does, right? Yeah. Yeah, I turn off all my notifications, so I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna start right when it hits the top of the hour. Okay, share screen. Oops, that looks crazy. Right, everybody can hear me, right? All right, my name is Victor. I'm a product manager here at GitLab, and you are watching the GitLab 11.7 kickoff meeting. So you should see on your screen the kickoff document, and that should be, there should be a link if you're watching the YouTube stream, there should be a link in the description of the video. And so I'd like to start off with what the plan team is doing. And so in 11.7, we're going to be working on these 3 features. Scrolling horizontally in the roadmap view. So if you look at the roadmap view right now in GitLab, it's great. You can select quarters, months, or weeks. And if you select quarters, it gives you this many quarters. And that's the longest in terms of time that you can go. And so you can't go further in the past or further into the future. And so that's exactly what this issue will address, allow you to scroll backward in time or forward in time. We're actually considering maybe using buttons, but suffice it to say, we'll figure out a way to do that. The next issue is searching or filtering in the board's navigation dropdown, searching and filtering. So what I mean by that is in the boards dropdown, you see something like this currently, and you see a lot of boards. So this is sort of silly. With the, it's not, we usually don't have the same board names, but you have many different boards. And so this will allow you to be able to quickly find the board you're looking for in a typical issue board navigation. And then the last one I wanted to highlight is importing CSV into issues. So what I mean by that is that a lot of times you might be using an external issue tracker such as Jira or some other system, and you wanted to import those issues into GitLab. And so we're going to provide a way to do exactly that in the format, the comma separated format, which is very typical because many tools allow you to export a CSV file. And we want to allow you to take that file and import it into GitLab itself. And so how we're planning to do that is very typically you have an issues list here at the project level, and you have a button to export as CSV. So we're going to have another button here right next to it that says import. And when you click on that, you're going to get a modal, something like this, where you can allow yourself to upload the CSV, click import, and this will happen behind the scenes asynchronously, and then you'll get an email notification once it has confirmed, GitLab has confirmed that it's complete, and then you can go back to the issue page and see those results. So that's what Plan is working on. James, up to you.
Thanks, Victor. The Create team's got 3 particular improvements we're focused on in the 11.6 place. This is a blockage request, which we began working on last release in 11.6. Currently, for merge request approvals, you're limited to specifying a list of users or groups and a count of approvals. And what multiple approval rules does is allow that to be increased so that you can have different rules. So instead of just saying I need one of Jane, Mary, or Bob to approve my merge request. You can now say I need one staff engineer, one product manager, and one QA, and they can be separate rules that get validated individually. And so what this will mean is if you choose to enable multiple rules, you'll see a structured breakdown of the different approval rules. So here we've got an example of some different teams that might need to approve, some different approval count requirements for each of those rules, and who has approved. And this is building on and working towards the changes we've been making to introduce a more sophisticated code owners approval system, in addition to the manually configured merge request approvals. The next change that we're working on is to do with self-approval of merge requests. A few releases back, we made it possible to turn self-approval blocking off. So by default, the merge request author could not approve their own merge request. And really this behavior is to make sure that the user who's introducing a code change isn't the person who's approving it. But the merge request author may be different from the commit author, or there might be multiple authors in a merge request. So if a teammate jumps in and starts adding a couple of commits on a more complicated feature, say a front end and back end developer collaborating with each other, currently we only block the author of the merge request, which is not strictly the same person. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be upgrading the behavior to actually block the merge request author and the commit authors in the merge request. And that should help, I guess, deliver the more expected behavior around disabling self-approvals. And the next change is, I guess, less exciting from the visuals. There's no change in behavior, except GitLab merge request should be faster. One of the most expensive things that we do in merge requests is render the syntax highlighted diffs. And I wanted to call out some really exciting work happening to tune merge requests and make them even faster. We're shipping improvements in 11.6 and continue to ship more in 11.7, and there'll be many more to come because performance is a very important feature at GitLab. Jason, how about verify?
All right, let me get my screen shared here. All right, so for verifying this release, we're going to be finishing up the upstream and downstream pipeline expansion. This is a feature that we started in the 11.6 release, which will let you explore pipelines up and down, kind of the way that they were triggered. We did do a decent amount of work on this in the 11.6 release, so we do have the basic functionality working, which you can see here in the next screen, where you can go up and down just one. What we'll be finishing up in this release is making sure that you can go, you can continue up and down the whole pipeline tree to see how your job was started and what was eventually triggered when you got to the end. And that's it for verify, so I'll turn things over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Jason. So for package team, we'll have two major deliverables here for this coming release. The first one is we'll be working to finish our support for our NPM package management. So similar to how we implemented Maven support within GitLab a couple releases ago, we'll also be adding NPM to that support as well. And so you'll be able to upload NPM packages to GitLab and share them with your colleagues and within your organization, as well as publicly if you'd like to. So that's really exciting there as far as iteration towards that vision. And the next item we have also is a group-based Maven API endpoint. This will make it a lot easier for folks to consume Maven libraries across different projects within their organization. Previously, we had a project-based repository URL where you essentially had to have essentially a repository per project. And the goal here is with this group-based repository is to remove that need. You could have one sort of repository for a top-level group, and then you can then leverage all the packages that can be contained in there. And so setup should be easier and should be easier to consume packages going forward once you've already added a repository for a single Maven instance that you're using within your organization. So two great features there for package. And with that, back to Jason to talk about release.
All right. So on the release side, we're going to be introducing the releases page MVC, which is a feature that we're really excited to bring, and it's part of our product vision for 2019. What this is going to allow you to do is to have a page that looks something like this within your project that will allow you to publish releases, showing what's changed in them, allowing the source code to be downloaded, and then linking to the actual asset that's associated with that release. So this is a great feature and one that we would love your feedback on. So please feel free to jump into this issue 41766 and let us know if you have any feedback on how this feature can work for you. And with that, I'll turn things over to Daniel.
Thank you, Jason. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so the configure team is going to be working on a couple of exciting things. So the first one of them is going to be API support for our Kubernetes integration. And basically, this is going to allow users to do all the activities that we do from the GUI today, such as creating clusters, deleting clusters, or making edits, all through an API. And basically, that will allow you to scale activities that were done per project. Of course, with the introduction of group level clusters, this is going to give you kind of more latitude to operate in your clusters. So that's kind of the first thing that we're working on, moving on to upgrading Kubernetes runner via our integration. So currently, when we install the runner application using our Kubernetes integration, there's no easy way to upgrade the runner version. Let's say if you want to take advantage of new features that have been added to newer versions. So basically what we're going to look to do here is show you what version is currently running on that application and give you an easy way to upgrade it. Moving on, this is one that we're carrying over from 11.6, and this is configuring Auto DevOps with secrets that are not in your repo. So let's say if you have a Rails app and you need to store your Rails secret, we really don't want to store that sort of thing in your repo. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a way for users to specify a variable that's going to be prepended with this syntax here of K8s_secret, and that's basically going to tell the integration that this is to be treated as a Kubernetes secret, and basically you will not have to store it in your repo any longer. The next one here is on the serverless side. So basically, as with 11.6, users are now able to deploy functions to their Knative application. And currently, we're only showing you a flat list of functions. And what we want to do here is show you more detail around those functions. So basically, we want to show you things like scale, like how many pods have been scaled up or down or to 0 for that particular function, and how many times the function has been invoked. So basically, just show you a graph of volume over time. And that will be along with the things that we're showing you in the flat list today, such as where the function resides in your repo, along with the URL where you can hit that function. And then the last thing that we're going to focus on is going to be moving Auto DevOps domain away from CI/CD settings. So currently, the Auto DevOps domain can be configured as part of your project settings. But let's say when you're using multiple clusters, it's not immediately obvious how we need to configure each one of those domains. So what we're going to do is we're going to move it away from the project settings and we're going to move it into the cluster settings. So this way, when you create a cluster, you're going to have a simple way to right there specify the domain for that particular cluster. And that is what the configure team is going to focus on. Josh, how about monitor?
Thanks, Daniel. That's some super exciting things there from the configure team. On the monitoring side, we're working on two major items here. The first one is our first iteration towards error tracking, or making it easier for users to work with, consume, and in general utilize errors. And so we'll be working to improve the general workflow between GitLab and also with Sentry as another open source tool for managing errors and exceptions. So what we'll be doing is we'll be having working to add a list of the errors that you can now see within GitLab, and you can then open up those within Sentry for more information. And then we'll also be working to try and build sort of the framework for viewing an error as far as the key information goes within GitLab, which you can then use in the future release of GitLab to embed within an issue or an incident or a merge request and see some of the really important details right there within GitLab. And of course, you can always dive into Sentry from there for the full workflow and experience. But this should, again, hopefully make it easier for folks to kind of work with the tools and consume the information wherever they may be in their workflow. So we're really excited about that. Next up is we've been working to switch our monitoring dashboard over from our previous charting solution over to our new one. And we're working on just finishing up a few of the last features to hit parity for our existing dashboard. And so we'll be doing that this release. And then we'll be going ahead and shipping that for all to consume with a more robust charting library that'll improve the experience today and also make it easier for us to add more features more quickly and more efficiently in the future. And so we're also very excited about that as well from a velocity standpoint on the monitoring team. With that, over to you, Fabio, for Secure.
Thank you, Josh. And in the Secure team for 11.7, we are continuing to improve the security dashboard at the group level. So the first item that I want to talk about is the filter option for the group security dashboard. This is very important because the more we add data into the security dashboard, the more is important to be able to get information you really want to look at. So we already shipped the security dashboard MVC, but we are gonna add a new option here at the top. You can see in the mockup drop downs to filter by severity, by project or report type data that is actually shown in the list. So the list will be filtered and you will focus on what is really important to you. You can see an anticipation also of the charts that will be shipped as part of 11.6. So this part is already there in the next release. On the same topic, we also want to show dependency scanning results in the group security dashboard. At the moment, we just show SAST results, but it's not the only thing that we want to show there. So dependency scanning is the next step because it's very important and the information is very useful to security people. And data will be shown consistently in the same dashboard, in the same list where the SAST data is currently put in. And the drill down capacity and filter options will allow you to select if you want to see both SAST and dependency scanning. That's the default option, or if you want to filter for one of the two kinds. In the future, we're going to add more and more types of results into the dashboard. We are also working on something very, very interesting that is part of the auto-remediate feature, and we want to create a code diff to fix dependency scanning vulnerabilities. It means that in the pipeline, when the dependency scanning is running, the process will be able to find exactly which changes are needed to your code in order to fix a possible dependency the vulnerability. For example, an updated npm package that must be upgraded to the latest version. This information is collected in the security report. It is sent to GitLab system, and the GitLab system will show to the users the code diff that is needed for the fix. So this information is shown in the modal window for the vulnerability itself. And from here, people can see what they need to change. For this release, changes should be done manually by the user. So users can look at the diff and can reproduce the same changes in a merge request, in a commit to their code. But this is just a step towards auto-remediate. In the future, in the next iterations, we want to automate this process and make these changes to automatically land in your code base. We also want to work on another issue that is the inclusion of predefined templates in GitLab YAML file. This will allow you to include any kind of template that is already defined and available in the GitLab, for example, the Auto DevOps template, or any template that is listed in the dropdown for GitLab YAML files into your own configuration. This could be done in a similar way. You can include any external file with a URL or local file to your repo. This is very important for the secure team in particular, because we want to provide a standard definition for the SaaS job, for the desk job, and all the other jobs that we are supporting for our features. So people can include them in their pipelines instead of copying and pasting examples from the GitLab website. That's very important because we want to keep these definitions up to date. And so when you upgrade GitLab to a new version, the new templates will be automatically available, and the includes will target those templates as well. So it's a very good way to keep your projects up to date with the security features definitions. This issue specifically is part of DevOps Verify, but the secure team is going to work on it, and that's why it's mentioned here. And that's all for secure team in 11.7. So James, back to you for Gitaly.
Thanks, Fabio. So continuing the work that we've been doing for the past few releases in the Gitaly team, we're working on the deduplication of Git objects for fork networks. So forks are a really handy way of collaborating on a single project, but everyone works instead of on a shared repository and pushes and pulls to the exact same repository. Forking allows you to have copies of that repository and then merge between them. And so when you've got all these copies of the same repository, that means that you've got a lot of duplication of the underlying data, because all the historical data for a repository will be the same. So for a large project like GitLab or other large open source projects, this means a GitLab instance quickly accumulates a lot of data that really doesn't need to be there. And so what we've been working on is implementing the first iteration of this, which uses Git alternates to share a common pool of data. And if you saw the release notes for Git 2.20, we've been working on some other elements to do with this performance improvements. We won't specifically be using Delta Islands in this next release, 11.7, but we're working towards that as part of this broader project of deduplication of forks. So specifically in 11.7, what we hope to ship is the first iteration of this that you will be able to turn on and use. So there are some requirements around using hashed storage. So both the parent project and any forks need to have hash storage enabled. And if that condition is met and this feature is enabled, your fork will be very small. So a 200 megabyte project, each fork might only be a megabyte rather than having 1,000 forks at 200 megabytes a piece. So this is a very nice improvement for instance administrators who operate larger or open source projects particularly. Also customers like GitLab.com as well. So we're very excited about this improvement. And you can read more about, I guess, Delta Islands in the recent release notes from Git. Over to you, Josh.
Thanks, James. That is super exciting. Can't wait for that to arrive. Let me go ahead and share my screen here and talk about what we're doing for package. So we'll be working on two dependency updates here, two key ones. We started those in our last release, and we'll be continuing to do them in this release. We essentially jumped to an interim release because the deltas between the previous version and the new versions were quite large. And so we'll be continuing that workflow here with Runit as well as also with a registry. For example, the last release was about a year ago, and the commit release was quite large registry for the new version. Can't wait to get it out there, a bunch of great improvements, but we're trying to do it in a manageable way. And so we'll be essentially went halfway last time, and we're looking to continue the process here with this release as well. We're also working to publish a new version of GitLab on the GKE Marketplace. This is a really nice improvement in that we can utilize Helm Tiller completely on the deploy side. And so when you go through and you kind of do your click, click, click deploy in the GKE Marketplace, under the hood, the tiller will be utilized, which means that you can continue to use Helm and Helm tiller if you'd like in the future kind of maintenance of that deployment to make it much easier to consume, manage, update, and control in the future. And so really excited to get that out there for folks who are deploying GitLab through the GK Marketplace. The final work we're doing here as well is also to continue our efforts on our operator. The operator is essentially a control plane that can run in Kubernetes that can then essentially look after the deployed instance of GitLab and then perform some actions and automation. The first use case we're using for this is downtime-free upgrades. Which requires some automation beyond that which Helm can support. And so we've been working on this project for some time, and now we're at the point of essentially it's merged, it's not on by default, and before we kind of turn on for everyone by default, we want to make sure we had tests and other basic practices to make sure that we don't break anything by accident in the future and make sure we have good coverage there. So that's what we're working on here in this release as we prepare to turn it on for everyone and make it much easier to update and deploy GitLab without downtime, which is really exciting for our Kubernetes deployments at GitLab. So with that, that's what we're doing on the distribution side. Dimitri, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're working on here for the UX team?
Thank you so much, Josh. Let me share my screen. See. So, hello, I'm Dimitri, one of the UX designers on GitLab. I'm going to introduce you to some improvements on the GitLab design system, which is dedicated to supporting and improving velocity on developing any of the product areas of GitLab itself. And as a first improvement for 11.7, we'll be restructuring the design system information architecture to include branding and marketing. So this way, branding and marketing will be included on the design system, and you'll be able to find that information there. To give a little bit of an example, this is our design system currently, and with a work in progress improvement, you'll be able to see, hey, there's brand, product information, research information, and marketing is in there as well. Going on, we have some improvements towards the chart documentation and pattern library. Those will particularly be beneficial towards the security and monitoring team, as well as configurability of configure team and some other product areas. We'll be improving the column charts library. This way, any decisions will be set in stone, or at least be defined, and we can know how to support these charting library. We know how to define those charting libraries inside of the application. The same goes for line charts, important as well, and how to define certain areas of those charts to zoom in and get your details out of them. To go on with the last part for 11.7 on the GitLab design system is our branding efforts. So we're branding our design system to get more eyes on it, to make it more inclusive, to get everybody to use it. The more people that use the design system, the higher the velocity will become, as more decisions will be defined in there. And part of that is branding it with a logo. Here are some work in progress iterations on that, as well as it will follow through in setting a fav icon for the design system and eventually promoting the principles that the design system have set with illustrations. And with that is the end of this GitLab kickoff. And I'm quite excited for the next iteration. There's some amazing improvements there, and I can't wait to bring them to you. I'll stop sharing for now.
Great, thanks, Dimitri. So that's it for today's kickoff. Just a couple of notes. December 22nd, in less than 2 weeks, we'll be releasing GitLab 11.6. That'll be the last minor release of GitLab. And what we just talked about will be GitLab 11.7. So that'll be the very first release in the new year. So I'll see everybody back on January 8th at exactly this time. And have a happy new year. Bye now.